Saturday afternoon, 2:31 p.m. I was looking for my car's inspection certificate. Not dramatic, not the beginning of anything, just the glove compartment, the back of it, where I keep the documents I don't look at often enough to put somewhere logical. Insurance card, old receipts, a pen that doesn't work, and then, folded once, tucked behind everything else, the kind of paper that had been placed there carefully rather than dropped in casually. A receipt. A motel receipt. Nikit. Cash payment. I looked at the date. 3 months ago. I looked at the names. 2 names. My husband's and my cousin's. I stood in the parking lot of the grocery store in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, and I read those 2 names 4 times. My name is Anna Calloway. I am 32 years old, and the receipt I found in my own car, not his, told me everything I needed to know about the last 3 months and about a camping trip that never happened. My name is Anna Calloway. I am 32 years old. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, the kind of city that is large enough to feel like a real place and small enough that certain things, certain people, certain mistakes have a way of finding each other eventually. My family has been in Knoxville for 3 generations, which means, and this matters for this story, that when I say cousin, I don't mean a distant name on a Christmas card list. I mean someone I grew up alongside, someone who was at every birthday, every holiday, every family dinner for 32 years, someone whose mother and my mother are sisters who have spoken on the phone every Sunday for as long as I can remember. Her name is Haley. She's 29, 3 years younger than me. She has always been, in the particular way of cousins who grow up close, something between a sister and a best friend. We had a fight once when we were teenagers about something I cannot now remember and made up within a week because the family dinners were too uncomfortable with us not speaking. I had been the maid of honor at her wedding 4 years ago. She had been the maid of honor at mine 3 years ago. I need to tell you about Blake before I tell you the rest. Blake Calloway is 35. He works in commercial insurance, sales side, the kind of job that involves a lot of client relationship management and a compensation structure that rewards the specific skill of making people feel comfortable and trusted. He is very good at it. He is very good at making people feel comfortable and trusted. I understand that differently now than I did 3 years ago when I married him. We met at 27 and 30, a mutual friends gathering, the kind of Saturday night that is low-key enough to actually talk to people. Blake was easy to talk to, attentive, warm, the kind of person who listens like what you're saying is the most interesting thing he's heard all week. I married him at 29. Haley was my maid of honor. She gave a toast. She cried when she gave it, real tears, the kind that make everyone else tear up too. She talked about watching me grow up, about knowing since we were children that I deserved someone wonderful, about how happy she was that I had found Blake. I have thought about that toast many times in the weeks since the parking lot. The camping trip was in March. Blake had told me about it 2 weeks in advance, a long weekend, Thursday through Sunday, a group of his college friends who did this every year or two. The Smokies, he said. A campsite they'd been going to for years. No cell service most of the time, he warned, so I shouldn't worry if I didn't hear from him. I had not worried. I had spent the weekend with my mother, which had been pleasant and ordinary. We had gone to see a movie on Friday evening. We had gone to the farmer's market Saturday morning. My mother had made her chicken soup on Sunday, and I had driven back to our house with a container of it for Blake's return. He came home Sunday evening looking tired in the specific way of someone who has been outdoors for several days, slightly windburned, a little quieter than usual, the particular contentment of someone who has been away from their normal life for a few days and is settling back into it. He had hugged me. He had thanked me for the soup. He had gone to bed early because he had an early call on Monday. I had not questioned any of it. I had no reason to question any of it. The camping trip had happened, in my understanding of reality, exactly as described, until 2:31 p.m. on a Saturday, 3 months later. The glove compartment. The receipt. I stood in the parking lot and I looked at the paper in my hand. The motel was 40 minutes from Knoxville, a small place near a lake, the kind that takes cash and doesn't ask questions, the kind that has been on the same stretch of highway for 30 years and that people use for specific purposes. The date was the Friday of the camping weekend. The room booked for 2 nights. The guests, Blake Calloway, Haley Morrison, her married name. Cash payment, no card on file. I folded the receipt. I put it in my coat pocket. I found the inspection certificate. It had been there the whole time, just underneath where the receipt had been sitting. I went into the grocery store. I bought what I had come for. I drove home. I want to tell you about the drive home because I think it says something about who I am and how I process things. I did not cry in the parking lot. I did not call anyone from the car. I drove the 14 minutes home in complete silence. Not the silence of shock exactly, though shock was there underneath everything. More like the silence of a person who has just received a piece of information so large that the brain needs time to find a place to put it. And until it does, everything else has to wait. I got home. I put the groceries away. I sat at the kitchen table. And I thought very carefully about what I knew, what I didn't know, and what I needed to know before I did anything. What I knew, a motel receipt in my car with my husband's name and my cousin's name from the weekend he told me he was camping. What I didn't know, how long, whether this was the first time, whether anyone else in the family knew, whether the receipt in my car had been placed there deliberately as a message or a mistake, or had ended up there accidentally. That last question was the one I kept coming back to. My car. Not Blake's car. My car. Blake had borrowed my car twice in the past 3 months, once when his was in the shop, once when he needed more cargo space for something work-related. Either time, the receipt could have been in his pocket and fallen out, or been placed in the glove compartment deliberately. I could not know which. What I could do was find out everything else before I decided what to do with what I'd found. I put the receipt in an envelope. I wrote the date on the outside. I put it in my own documents folder, not the shared one, mine, in the locked drawer of my desk that Blake had never had reason to open. And then I made dinner. Blake came home at 6:30. We ate together. He told me about his day. I told him about mine. I did not mention the groceries, or the glove compartment, or the receipt. He had no idea. I spent the following week researching. Not dramatically, I want to be clear about that. I did not hire a private investigator. I did not go through his phone while he slept. What I did was quieter and, in its own way, more thorough. I went back through everything that was already available to me in my own life with new eyes. The credit card statements, our joint card. I had never looked at them carefully before because there had never been a reason to. I looked now. 3 months of statements. Nothing from the motel, which had been cash, which was its own kind of information, but other things. A restaurant charge twice on weekday evenings when Blake had told me he had client dinners, both downtown Knoxville, both for 2 people based on the amounts. A flower purchase in February that I had not received flowers from. I documented everything. Dates, amounts, a brief note about what I had been told versus what the statement showed. Not obsessively, practically. The list of a person who needs to understand the full shape of something before they act. On Thursday evening, I called my friend Diane. Diane had known me since college. She knew Blake, she knew Haley. Not closely, but well enough to have been at our wedding, to have exchanged pleasantries at family events over the years. I told her what I'd found. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Anna, how long do you think?" "I don't know, at least 3 months based on the receipt, possibly longer." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to ask them," I said. "Both of them, together." Diane was quiet again. "Together," she said. I want them in the same room, I said. I want them to see each other's faces when I put it on the table. I don't want to give either of them the chance to coordinate a story. That's, Diane paused, that's actually very smart. It's the only way I get the truth, I said. Separately, one of them will lie and the other will follow. Together, they can't. I spent the weekend thinking about how to get them both in the same room without either of them knowing why. The answer, when it came, was almost embarrassingly simple. My mother's birthday was in 3 weeks. A family dinner, the kind that happened every year. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole architecture of a Knoxville family that has been gathering in the same house for decades. Haley would be there. Blake would be there. I did not have to engineer anything. I just had to wait. 3 weeks. I could wait 3 weeks? I put the envelope back in the locked drawer. I went to bed, and I thought about a toast at a wedding 3 years ago. A cousin crying real tears, saying she had always wanted me to find someone wonderful. And I thought about all the different ways a person can tell the truth while hiding something enormous underneath it. The 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. I want to be precise about this because I think people imagine, when they hear a story like this, that the period between finding out and doing something about it must be dramatic, full of confrontation and sleepless nights and the kind of visible distress that other people can see and ask about. It was not like that. It was quiet. I went to work, I came home, I made dinner, I had conversations with Blake that were, from the outside, entirely normal. He did not know anything had changed. He was exactly himself, attentive, warm, easy to be around. The person I had married, who was also, I now understood, a person I did not fully know. Both things were true simultaneously. That is the part I have found hardest to explain to people since. That the love was still there, underneath the knowledge, for those 3 weeks. Not the same. It had changed shape, changed temperature, become something I was holding carefully rather than resting in. But it was there. I think that is the most honest thing I can say about it. The receipt was in the locked drawer. Blake was in our bed. Both of those things were true at the same time. I called a divorce attorney on the 2nd week, not to file anything, just to understand. The same impulse that had made me document the credit card statements. Know the full shape before you act. Her name was Christine Watts, a colleague of Diane's husband, recommended quietly in the specific way that recommendations happen when someone needs to be discreet about needing one. I told her the situation. She listened. "You have the receipt," she said. "That's significant. Physical evidence is always significant. I also have the credit card statements, the restaurant charges, the gas station." "Good," she said. "Keep all of it. Don't confront anyone until you have everything organized and until you've decided what outcome you want." "I've decided," I said. "Which is?" "I want the truth from both of them, in the same room, and then I want out." Christine was quiet for a moment. "The same room," she said. "Both of them." "Yes." "That's not the approach most people take," she said carefully. "I know," I said, "but I know these people. I've known Haley my whole life. If I confront them separately, she'll call him the second I hang up and they'll coordinate. I need them together." "All right," Christine said slowly. "Then here's my advice. Have the conversation somewhere that is yours, your turf, and make sure you have someone with you, not for physical safety, just as a witness." "Diane," I said. "Tell her everything beforehand. She needs to know what she's walking into." I told Diane everything on the Thursday before the birthday dinner. Not on the phone, in person, at her kitchen table, with coffee I barely touched. I told her about the parking lot, the receipt, the 3 weeks, Christine Watts. I showed her photographs of the credit card statements on my phone. She listened to all of it. When she finished, she sat with it for a long moment. Then she said, "Anna, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it before the dinner." I looked at her. "I don't know anything," she said carefully. "I want to be clear about that. I don't have information. But about 8 months ago, at your 4th of July party, I saw something between Blake and Haley, something small. I dismissed it because it was so small, and I thought I was—" "8 months ago?" I said. "I know," Diane said. "I'm sorry. I should have—" "You didn't know," I said. "You saw something small. I saw things and dismissed them too." She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "What do you need from me for Saturday?" "I need you there, before the family arrives, so you can be present when I do it." "I'll be there." My mother's birthday dinner was on a Saturday. My mother knew nothing. I want to say that clearly and with emphasis because it matters. My mother had no idea what was going to happen at her birthday dinner, and the fact that it happened there is something I have had to make peace with since. I did not plan it there to cause drama at her birthday. I planned it there because it was the only natural occasion to get both Blake and Haley in the same room without raising suspicion, and because I have decided after 3 weeks of waiting that I was not going to wait any longer. Diane arrived at my parents' house at 4, an hour before anyone else was expected. I had told my mother she was coming early to help set up. My mother had been pleased. She liked Diane. At 4:15, I told my mother I needed to speak with Blake and Haley privately for a few minutes before anyone else arrived. Something I wanted to discuss before the family gathering, I said. My mother, who had known me for 32 years and could read my voice like a document, looked at me for a moment. "Is everything all right?" she said. "It will be," I said. She nodded. She went to the kitchen. I set up in the living room, 2 chairs facing the couch. Diane sat in one chair. I sat in the other. The envelope was in my pocket. Blake arrived first. He came in warm and easy the way he always came into my parents' house, kissed my cheek, said hello to Diane, and looked around. "Everyone else coming soon?" he said. "Haley's on her way," I said. "Sit down. I wanted to talk to both of you before the dinner." Something moved in his face. Not guilt yet, just the first shadow of unease that comes when an ordinary sentence lands in a way that doesn't feel ordinary. He sat on the couch. 5 minutes later, Haley's car pulled into the driveway. Haley came in the way she always came into my parents' house. Familiar, warm, the ease of someone who has been walking into this house her whole life. She saw Blake on the couch. She saw me and Diane in the chairs, and she stopped. Not dramatically, just a slight interruption in her movement, a recalibration. "Hey," she said, looking between me and Blake and back to me. "What's going on?" "Sit down, Haley," I said. She sat on the couch, not next to Blake, at the other end, which told me something. I looked at both of them. Diane was beside me, quiet, her hands folded. I reached into my pocket. I took out the envelope. I opened it. I placed the receipt on the table between us, face up, both names visible. The date, the motel, cash payment, 2 nights. I watched their faces. Blake looked at the receipt. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at Haley. Haley looked at the receipt. Then she looked at Blake. Then she looked at her hands. Nobody said anything for a very long time. "That's the weekend you told me you were camping," I said to Blake. My voice was entirely steady. I had been saving the steadiness for 3 weeks, and it was there when I needed it. March 14th through 16th. Blake opened his mouth. "Don't," I said. "Don't tell me it's not what it looks like. I know what it looks like. I know what it is.
I found it in my car. Your names are on it. You paid cash. I need you to tell me one thing, and I need the truth. How long? Silence. Blake, I said, how long? He looked at the table. 7 months, he said.
7 months. I had been married for 3 years. 7 months of those 3 years had been this. I looked at Haley. She still had not said anything. She was looking at her hands in her lap with the specific stillness of someone who has no move left to make and knows it. Haley, I said. She looked up. Her eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Anna. Don't, I said. Not yet. I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked him. How long? She looked at Blake. Don't look at him, I said. Look at me. How long? She looked at me. 7 months, she said. The same. I nodded. I picked up the receipt. I put it back in the envelope. I stood up. The dinner is going to happen. My mother's birthday dinner is going to happen in this house in 45 minutes, and you are both going to be present, and you are both going to be civil, because this is not her story to be part of. After the dinner, you both leave, and on Monday, I'm calling my attorney. I looked at Blake. You can stay in the house through the end of the week. After that, make arrangements. I walked to the kitchen. My mother was at the counter. She looked at my face. Anna, she said. I'm okay, Mom, I said. I'll tell you everything after. Right now, I need to help you set the table. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she handed me the stack of plates, and we set the table together. The dinner happened. I know that sounds impossible. I know that the idea of sitting through a dinner birthday party 45 minutes after putting a motel receipt on a coffee table in front of your husband and your cousin sounds like something no person could actually do. But here's what I've learned about human beings and their capacity for compartmentalization under social pressure. It is enormous, especially in families, especially in Southern families, where the specific grammar of a family gathering, the food, the ritual, the performance of normalcy for the sake of the oldest people in the room has a weight that overrides almost everything else in the short term. My grandmother was there. She is 81 years old, and she has been coming to my mother's birthday dinner for as long as there has been a birthday dinner to come to. She sat at the head of the table, and she talked about her garden, and she told a story about my grandfather that everyone had heard before, and everyone laughed at anyway. I sat across from Blake. I did not look at him much. I sat next to my aunt, Haley's mother, and I talked to her about her new job and her garden, and whether she was going to the family reunion in August. Haley sat at the other end of the table. She was quiet. More quiet than usual, but Haley was sometimes quiet at family dinners, and nobody seemed to notice. Blake was not quiet. Blake was in the specific way of someone who was very good at being comfortable in social situations and has decided that performing comfort is his only available option, entirely present and functional. He talked to my uncle about football. He helped my mother carry dishes from the kitchen. I watched him do it, and I thought about 7 months. 7 months of this face, in this house, at this table. 7 months of ease and warmth and the specific performance of a man who was very good at making people feel comfortable and trusted. His job, essentially. At the end of the dinner, my grandmother held my hand when she said goodbye. I look tired, sweetheart, she said. Long week, I said. She patted my hand. Get some rest, she said. I kissed her cheek. I watched her walk to her car, and then I went back inside to help my mother clean up. After everyone left, I sat with my mother. Just the two of us. Diane had squeezed my hand at the door and left without needing to be told that this next part was private. Blake had left immediately after the dinner, which he had clearly understood was the expectation. Haley had lingered. I'd seen her standing near her car in the driveway, looking toward the house for almost 10 minutes before she finally got in and drove away. My mother poured 2 glasses of wine. She sat across from me. She did not say anything. She has known me for 32 years, and she has learned, better than almost anyone, that I will say what needs to be said when I'm ready to say it. I told her. Not everything, some of it I kept for later, for the weeks ahead when I would need to process things more carefully, but the shape of it, the receipt, the conversation in the living room, 7 months. My mother listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, she was very still for a moment. Then she said, "Haley." Just her name. The specific weight of a woman saying the name of her niece, her sister's daughter, the child she had watched grow up, after hearing what I had just told her. "Yes," I said. My mother looked at the table. "Your aunt," she said slowly. "Her mother. She doesn't know?" "No," I said. My mother looked at the table. "This is going to—" My mother stopped, started again. "This is going to go through the whole family, Anna." "I know," I said. "Are you ready for that?" I thought about it honestly. "No, but I'm not going to lie to protect them. That's not something I'm willing to do." My mother nodded slowly. She reached across the table. She put her hand over mine. 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 She put her hand over mine and said, "Then we tell the truth, and we deal with what comes." The family came apart the way families come apart when something like this surfaces. Not all at once, not with a single dramatic confrontation, but in a series of phone calls and silences and conversations that happen over weeks, each one shifting the landscape slightly until the map of what your family looks like doesn't resemble what it was before. My aunt found out on the Monday after the birthday dinner. I called her myself. I thought about having someone else do it, my mother offered, but it seemed important that she hear it from me directly. She was the one most directly affected outside of myself, her daughter. The call was the hardest conversation I have had in my adult life. She cried, not quietly, the specific, desperate crying of a parent who is hearing something about their child that they cannot reconcile with the child they know. "Anna," she kept saying, "Anna, I'm so sorry. This is not your fault," I said. "I need you to hear that. None of this is yours to be sorry for." "She's my daughter," my aunt said. "I know. She's also the person who did this. Both of those things are true." My aunt and I have not found our way back to each other yet. I think we will eventually. I think the love between us, the specific love of an aunt and a niece who have known each other for 32 years, is underneath the damage and will outlast it. I just don't know how long it will take. Haley tried to call me 4 times in the week after the birthday dinner. I did not answer. She texted once. "Anna, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I just need you to know that I love you. I have always loved you. I know that sounds impossible right now, but it's true." I read it. I did not respond. I do not know what I will eventually do with it. Some things take longer than a few weeks. The divorce was filed on a Wednesday. Christine had everything organized: the receipt, the credit card documentation, the statement I had prepared detailing the timeline as I understood it. Blake did not contest the filing. I think, and this is my reading of him, which may not be entirely accurate, I think he had been living with the specific dread of exactly this moment for 7 months, and the arrival of it was in some strange way a relief. The waiting was over. He moved out by Friday of that week. He did not take much. Either he did not want much, or he was too ashamed to ask for it. Either way, the house became mine in a way that was practical rather than symbolic. He simply left, and I stayed, and the life that had been ours became mine to rearrange. I rearranged it. Not dramatically, not the tearing down and rebuilding that happens in movies, the quiet, gradual kind. Moving a piece of furniture to where I had always wanted it, repainting the bedroom a color I had liked and he hadn't. Small assertions of a space that was now unambiguously mine. The inspection certificate, by the way, was in the glove compartment the whole time.
exactly where it was supposed to be, right next to the receipt that had been placed, apparently, in the same spot, without anyone thinking about what would happen when I eventually looked. I renewed the registration. I filed the paperwork. I kept the receipt, not to look at, just to have. The physical evidence of something that happened that I did not imagine that was real. About a month after the divorce was filed, I was at the grocery store. The same one, the same parking lot. Not deliberately, it was just the nearest grocery store to my house, and I had been shopping there for 4 years, and I was not going to change grocery stores because of what had happened in the parking lot. I was putting bags in the trunk when I heard my name. I turned around. Haley. She was 3 cars away, a grocery bag in each hand, looking at me with an expression I am not going to try to describe in detail because it belongs to her and to that parking lot and not to anyone listening to a story later. We looked at each other for a moment. Neither of us moved, and then she said, very quietly across 3 cars in a parking lot in Knoxville, Tennessee, "I'm sorry, Anna." Not the text, not a phone call, just her voice in a parking lot saying the words. I looked at her for a long time. I did not say anything. I got in my car, I drove home, and I sat in the driveway for a while thinking about 32 years of the same person and about parking lots and about the specific, complicated nature of a love that does not simply stop because it should.
It has been 8 months. 8 months since the parking lot, the glove compartment, the receipt. 8 months since a birthday dinner that nobody in my family will ever fully forget, though most of them mercifully did not know what was happening at it while it was happening. I am still in Knoxville. I thought about leaving, the specific appeal of somewhere new, somewhere without the accumulated geography of 32 years of a life that now had this in it. I thought about it seriously for about 2 months. I looked at jobs in Nashville, in Charlotte, in Atlanta, and then I decided, no. Not because Knoxville doesn't have the receipt and the parking lot and the birthday dinner in it now. It does. Those things are here. But so is everything else. My grandmother, who is 81 and comes to my mother's birthday dinner every year. My parents, who have been in the same house as long as I can remember. The specific quality of a late Tennessee summer evening that I have loved since I was a child, and that does not belong to Blake or to Haley or to anyone except the place itself. I stayed. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks after it was filed. There was not much to divide. We had been married 3 years. The house was mine before the marriage, a decision I had made at 28, buying before we got together, that I am grateful for in a way I could not have anticipated at the time. The car was mine. The finances were largely separate. What Blake took was his own things. What I kept was everything else, including the inspection certificate, which is current now and filed properly in the glove compartment, exactly where it belongs. Christine shook my hand when it was done. "You handled this with remarkable composure," she said. "I had 3 weeks of practice," I said. She smiled. "Most people don't wait 3 weeks," she said. "Most people confront immediately. They lose the advantage of preparation." "I'm a very prepared person," I said. "I noticed," she said. My mother and my aunt are still sisters. I want to say that because I think it's the part of this story that people might expect to be the final casualty, that the family fracture would go all the way through, that my mother and her sister would lose each other in the wreckage of what their children had done. They did not. They are still sisters. It has been harder, my mother told me on a Sunday afternoon in October, that some of their phone calls now have a quality they did not have before, a carefulness, a navigating around. But they are still sisters. They still call each other every Sunday. Some things, it turns out, are harder to break than you would think. My aunt and I have spoken twice since the birthday dinner, both times briefly, both times with the specific effort of 2 people who love each other and are trying to find their way back to a version of that love that works after something enormous has changed the landscape. I think we will get there. I don't know when, but I think we will. Haley and I have not spoken since the parking lot. I do not know when or whether we will. I think about her sometimes. Not constantly, not with the intrusive quality of a wound that won't close, more like the way you think about a place you loved that you can't go back to, with a kind of grief that has, over 8 months, become less sharp and more like a permanent alteration in the landscape of what you know. She was my maid of honor. She cried at my wedding. Both of those things are still true. They are just true alongside something else now. I have come to believe, slowly over 8 months, that people contain more than one truth simultaneously, that someone can love you genuinely and also betray you genuinely, that neither truth cancels the other, that holding both at the same time is hard, and is also, eventually, the only honest way to understand what happened. I am not there yet with Haley, but I am closer than I was 8 months ago, and I am moving. What I know now, 8 months after a parking lot and a glove compartment and a piece of paper with 2 names on it, I know that evidence does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it is a receipt, folded once, tucked behind an insurance card in a car you have owned for 3 years. Sometimes the most important thing you will ever find is in the most ordinary place. And when you find it, whatever it is, wherever it is, the question is not whether you had the right to look. The question is what you do with it. I put it in an envelope. I put it in a locked drawer. I waited 3 weeks. I put it on a table, and I watched 2 people who had been very careful for 7 months finally run out of room to hide. That is all it took. 1 piece of paper, 1 table, no room left to hide. If you are looking for something, if you have the feeling that something is not right, that the story you're being told has a shape that doesn't match the evidence in front of you, trust the feeling. Look in the glove compartment. You might not find anything, or you might find the 1 piece of paper that tells you everything. Either way, you'll know. And knowing is always better than not knowing, even when what you find is hard. Even then. Thanks for listening.